to pause that and hit live.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us. We'll be starting in just a second.
Yeah. Are you still laughing at it?
I'm still laughing at you, yeah. It just looks so strange.
Why isn't it live for me? Let's see.
It takes a second.
Yeah, there it goes. Let's see. Mute. We'll put down the quality. Oh, look at us at full HD. Yeah, now I can watch the video and see how it looks. Oh, why is the dog getting up now?
Always the way.
Oh, she's literally coming into the room right now. She's been asleep for the last 2 hours. She's like, oh, you starting up the podcast?
And, yeah, right?
Oh, no, girl, no. Get out. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we'll be starting momentarily. Lots and lots to talk about. This might be a long one. We'll try and keep it as short as possible. But we've got all of CES to talk about. We've got Windows 11 to talk about. We've got Surface Duo to talk about, and HoloLens as well.
I gotta bring up the recorder. Oh no, not the recovery media creator. I'm too fast for Windows. All right, testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. All right, that seems to be working fine. Dog, why are you in here? Move the Skype thing over. Close that.
I just can't get over the eye thing. It's so creepy.
Abby, get out. Get out.
I'm also using a new PC today. I'm streaming from a one of those sort of mini PCs. So we'll see how that goes. Seems to be okay so far. It's got a Ryzen 5 6600H and a Radeon 660M, which I believe isn't great, but it's doing the job, so I'm alright.
All right, I am now recording.
I'm now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 295 for January 13th, 2023. Hey everyone, Gianna Rubino back here with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast after a nice vacation we had. Well, it wasn't really a vacation. Sure, it didn't feel like a vacation. Although I did have some time off. That was kind of nice. But we also had CES in between there where I was in Las Vegas, and I still have content that I need to publish from that, but we'll go over some of the big news that was there. Basically, all the cool stuff that you guys need to know about that was announced there as well. We'll be also going over Zach's exclusive Surface Duo 3 report. Yes, we finally have an update about the status of Surface Duo 3, what to expect there, and it's, well, it's what we've been talking about for the last 6 months about the choice that Microsoft has to make. So we'll go over the details for that. Also cover some Windows 11 news. As always, there's been a few updates since then. Oh, yeah, we didn't even put in, I mean, did you put in there, do you want to talk about, well, a separate section. We'll talk about the Apple's apps are now on Windows 11, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I told you to put that in. So Apple TV and Apple Music and Apple devices are now available on Windows, but we'll talk about those. Bad news for HoloLens. So the U.S. Army has made a decision that's not so great. Lenovo has a Surface Neo. Yes, I hinted at this, I believe, at the last podcast, but that's the story. We'll go over that, the specifications, and what it means. Following that, we'll just go over all the big news from CES, and then if we have a thing of the week, we'll do a thing of the week as well. Zach, how are you doing on this fine, cold, wintry Friday?
I was doing okay until I saw your creepy eyes.
Yes, and so let's talk about that real quickly. So if you're watching the YouTube playback of this or watching it live, maybe I look a bit weird or different. And that's because, as some of you probably recall, I use NVIDIA Broadcast on this podcast. I'm not actually, am I using the sound? I forgot. I think I am using the sound.
Sometimes
microphone.
it makes it crackly, though, so be careful.
Yeah, I mean, are you hearing the crackly?
No, not right now. It sounds okay for now.
Okay, because I do have it on. So
Okay, well,
if there's crackly, that's that. They haven't fixed it. But version 1.4 came out, and with it came some new features and improvements. They're always so. For those who don't know, NVIDIA Broadcast Quickly, free app from NVIDIA that uses your RTX video card. And what it does is it uses that video card for AI processing. And it's using it for, you can use it for microphone. So it does noise reduction and it works really, really well. It can also do room echo removal. And these are all options. You can run two at the same time. There's also your speakers, so you can filter out noise coming from other people, say if you're on a call. And then there's the camera function. Which the camera function is what I'm using. You can background blur. So if you're, thinking my blur looks really, really good, that's why it's using my video card, RTX 4080 Ti. And the new feature, they have two new features for video that came out. I'm only using one because you can only use two at one time. There's a vignette effect, which is kind of interesting. Basically, yeah, it makes your corners darker and gives you a vignette. It's a little bit more dramatic, kind of cool looking, but obviously not necessarily appropriate for this podcast. What I'm using, and I don't really need it for this podcast, but I just want to demonstrate it, is the eye contact feature. So we've seen this before with Microsoft. They did this on the Surface Pro X originally, and then it came with Surface Pro 9. And what it's doing is it's using AI processing to simulate my eyes. So even though I may be looking at my screen instead of looking at Zach in my lower right corner or something like that, it's going to move my eyes virtually. So it looks like I'm looking at the camera and maintaining eye contact. And it's a little creepy and it's a little weird. For instance, let's see if I can do it again now. I'm going to close one eye.
God.
And so I'm closing my left eye. If you're watching this live, my left eye is 100% closed. It's not opening and closing. But you'll see the AI kind of like makes it jump around. It doesn't know what to do with one eye.
Yeah.
It knows how to blink with two eyes, but one eye is like, wait, what's going on? I don't know what to do.
Well,
And so it gets a little strange, a little cartoony.
yeah.
But it's pretty cool.
I don't know what Nvidia's doing, because I remember using it on the Pro X, and all the Pro X used to do was it would essentially just adjust the picture and reposition the eyes so that it does look like it's looking at the camera. Whereas it looks like what Nvidia's doing is they're applying like a 3D replica of your eyes over your eyes, because sometimes it does it well, and when you look around, like the pupil follows and stuff and continues looking at the camera, and sometimes it looks okay, but you can trick it really easily, and that's why it's really uncanny.
It is beta.
Yeah.
So we got to keep that in mind. But yeah, in terms of, compared to what Microsoft was doing, Microsoft's is very subtle. In fact, a lot of people are like, wait, is this thing really working?
Yeah.
It's very, very subtle. But NVIDIA's is definitely more like, all right, something going on here. So
we're going to animate your eyes.
yeah, we're going to literally animate your eyes. But it is beta. It is brand new, so obviously it's going to evolve and tweak over time, and I'm sure we'll do that. So
the other thing
I think it's kind of cool, though.
I would say the other thing it's doing is it doesn't have your eye color nailed. Your eye color keeps changing ever so slightly. Yeah.
Yeah, when I do check out the video playback, I kind of see that happening sometimes. But yeah, that's beta for you. So I can toggle it on and off. Let's see what happens. Let me bring it up again. Let's see. Okay, here's the switch. All right, so now I'm like looking at Zach on Skype, and I just turned it off.
Yeah. There's a huge...
So this is this is me, my normal eyes, and now I'll turn it back on, and I'm still looking at the same spot. My eyes are not moving, and so now it's back on.
It's so
and
weird.
So there's that. And let's see, I can put on the vignette effect if you want to see. So that's vignette, and you can control the strength of that.
Yeah,
there we go.
Nice.
We can make it a little subtle. Yeah, it's a little bit more. A little dramatic looking.
It's quite doom and gloom, which is perfect for our first story.
Yeah, exactly. Let me put an eye contact and creep everybody out. So yeah, that's NVIDIA Broadcast. Like I said, free app. If you have an RTX video card, go get it. It is pretty fun to play around with. It's all optional. You don't need to use this stuff, but it is fun to play with. All right, let's go to our first story. Surface Duo 3 report. Zach, you've been talking about this for a while and hinting about it coming. You finally published your story. What's the deal? What are you expecting for a Surface Duo 3?
So yeah, as Dan mentions, we have been hinting at this for a while. The conversation throughout 2022 was, what is Microsoft going to do with the next Surface Duo? Will it be a continuation of the form factor it currently is, which is a dual screen phone with a 360-degree hinge, or will they try something a little bit more radical? Or I guess less radical if depending on how you look at it. And the reason it took me so long to get this story out is because it took me a while to actually get it confirmed. It was a conversation Microsoft was having internally throughout 2022, according to a few people who I've spoken to. But nobody was able to be like, yes, no, they're definitely pivoting to this. Because I'd also heard that there was an actual dual screen Surface Duo 3 in development. So I didn't want to come out and say, oh yeah, they're going to move to this other thing, just in case that wasn't correct. But I was finally able to confirm it a couple of weeks back that yes, it does appear that Microsoft will be moving the Surface Duo over to a more traditional, true foldable style phone, like a Galaxy Fold or a Vivo X Fold. So internal foldable screen with an external cover screen with a 180-degree hinge. And that's, if you're a Surface Duo fan, if you're in the Surface Duo community, that's pretty bad news. It's been quite devastating for a lot of people. However, in the sort of wider tech space who have been covering this story, it appears to be relatively positive news. A lot of people are kind of like, yeah, well, duh, this is obviously the way to go, because of devices like the Galaxy Fold, which have been quite successful. And we've seen other OEMs from Xiaomi, Huawei, Oppo coming out with these foldables as well. It does appear to be the way the market is going in regards to foldables, with the dual screen vision not taking off too successfully, I think is fair to say. Microsoft has shipped two versions of these now, and I think the second version didn't sell quite as well as Microsoft was hoping it would. So let's talk about. Well, first of all, Dan, I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think of Microsoft moving to a traditional foldable style design?
Yes, I wrote an editorial about this as a response. And, I've already talked about this on the podcast previously because you and I have been talking about this for almost 6 months now about this decision that Microsoft was going to have to make. And my thoughts haven't changed on it, right? So you and I both prefer dual screen. If, we could have our way, we'd keep the dual screen Surface Duo 3 with just improvements that they were planning. And I'd be happy to go with that. It'd be a niche device, but it was something different on the market. I like the form factor, fine. That said, I'm more interested in the success of the product line. And the choice of, might have come down to like, either, if we go to foldable, or we put out a dual screen version and that sinks and doesn't do well as well. It doesn't gain more market share or interest, in which case the product line, is either canceled or they have to do what they're going to do, which is switch to the single screen foldable. So it's a regrettable decision, but a fully understandable one. If I was Microsoft, I'd just be like, listen, we tried. And to be honest, this is on Microsoft a bit too. So there's, a couple factors here that impacted. Obviously, Surface Duo 1 and 2 coming out the gate with bad software and leaving a bad impression for reviewers. First impressions make everything. And when those reviews came out, they set the standard. People already got the message. These things are not good. They're buggy and it doesn't work well. Now, that has been fixed, but as anybody knows how messaging works on the internet, it's hard to correct a story later on. Yeah. It happens all the time, and this is really, something on social media that happens. A story comes out, it gets all this attention, and then turns out that story is wrong. The correction comes out, no one pays attention to the correction, and then the myth lives on about that story. And that happened here with Duo 1 and Duo 2, and that's fully on Microsoft. That's their fault. They released a product that was buggy, and that's the result. The other thing is, it didn't help that they came late to the market, and I don't want to say late because foldables are still new, but they came after Samsung, and Samsung came out with their device, and everybody looked at that thing. And then Duo 2 came out, and there was a lot of equivocation, and people were like, oh, well, let's compare the two because they technically both fold. And those comparisons are inevitable. Now, had Duo come out on its own, and there was no such thing as a foldable device, I think, and it got time to breathe on the market for a year or two, I think it would have had a better track record and acceptance. But it didn't. So it came out after Fold, and then Samsung kept iterating and improving their device, and they're already on Fold 4, and by the time Duo 3 is going to come out, we're going to be on Fold 5. So it's like that's a hard thing. Also, and this is a sore spot for people too, canceling Surface Neo did not help.
Yeah.
Now, I know Neo was running a different operating system, but had those come out at the same time, people would have seen a synergy between those
Hmm.
devices. They would have seen like, oh, Microsoft's trying to do this on purpose. They want this form factor, and they kind of complement each other. I'm not saying it would have necessarily succeeded, but it would have helped. And now I still had issues with Surface Neo. I think it's too small as a device. There was the issue with the Windows 10X, or the operating system that was going to run, which was more limited. The battery life probably wouldn't have been good on it, and I just think it was too small as a PC. Even though it felt great in the hand, to the quality was there. I think it was just too small. So I think all these things come together, and it's just like, listen, you tried, it didn't work. And also just the messaging. We know, I've talked about this endlessly. Microsoft did a soft launch with these devices, no advertising on TV, no commercialization, no carrier deals, and all that kind of stuff, because they wanted it just to get out there, get feedback, and build a kind of a slow momentum out there. But the lack of consumer education, which we tried to fill that gap. We wrote a lot of editorials. You and I have talked a lot about this. Shane Craig has released a ton of videos about this. It just wasn't enough to overcome the perception. And we know this, right? If you own a Surface Duo 2, you pretty much get it. I'm not saying all those people love their device, but a lot of them do, right? And it's because they use it and they're like, oh, I get it now. I get why this device exists and I love it. But a lot of people, the majority of people who don't own the device still weigh in with their own opinions, and they're just viewing it from their computer, and they're like, that sucks. That's stupid. That's a fold. You said it perfectly on Twitter. It's a Fold 4 with a gutter in the middle and a gap.
Yeah.
It's with a major flaw. And that's what Duo is. It's a Fold 4 with a major flaw in it. And that's what people saw, and that's what people believe. And I believe that 100%. So I think this is the only choice that they really have if we want them to continue making this kind of new innovative form factor.
Yeah, I totally agree. For the Duo. It's all about perception, and unfortunately, Microsoft fumbled the message in regards to what the Duo is, how it's supposed to be used, because they didn't really market it too well either to begin with. So the message wasn't even out there to begin with. People see it as face value. Oh, it's a Fold with a gap in the middle. I don't want that. And then reviewers didn't help. Maybe Microsoft didn't do a good enough job at briefing people who reviewed the device on what its intentions are. Because if you go back and watch any Duo review, all of them will mention the gap as a negative. Almost all of them. I don't think one mainstream review mentioned the gap as being a positive, which is what Microsoft sort of saw it as originally. Remember on stage in 2019, Panos Panay came out on stage and he said that the gap makes you more productive. It's defined real estate. And Microsoft had apparently done market research and whatnot to come to that conclusion. But then reviewers got hold of it and was like, that's ridiculous. I can't watch a video across both screens. What is the point? And
Right.
also, Android doesn't help because you can span any app, but 99% of them don't actually adapt to that gutter. That is starting to change with Android 12L, but I think it's a little too late at this point. The Duo 1 launched with Android 10. Only now with Android 12L 2 years later are we starting to see some apps kind of make sense when you span. And even then it's accidental for the most part. A lot of Google apps now do it, but you can sort of see that it's not deliberately for the Duo. It's just because of the design guidelines. And so the conversation Microsoft was having is how do we turn this into a mainstream or a more successful product? Because unlike Surface PCs, where Microsoft really has to keep innovation, Microsoft can't compete with its Windows partners, right? They kind of have to tread a fine line with Surface PCs, but that's not really the same case with Android, because Microsoft doesn't make Android. It doesn't have Android partners, so Microsoft can actually compete in the Android space, and doing so with a dual screen phone, where the reputation for it currently and likely forever will be a worse Galaxy Fold. How do you compete there? And so I was told one of the reasons why they are making this change is because they do want to turn their phone business into a successful one. They want the phone aspect of Surface to be something that makes money, like Surface Pro and Surface Laptop. They'd rather it be more like Surface Pro than Surface Studio, which is a very niche product that doesn't sell many units and is super expensive. They would like to have a successful phone business. And so alongside this news, I'd also heard that Microsoft has actually been prototyping different form factors, including a more traditional sort of slab style phone. Whether or not that actually ships will remain to be seen. But that is super interesting to me, the fact that they seem to be committed to the idea of releasing more Android hardware, including multiple form factors, either starting with the foldable device, or maybe if they can get a slab phone out quicker, they could do that first. But this does seem like the next step in their vision of making phones, and the Duo was like the first step, and now they've done that, and all the work that they've done on the Duo so far will benefit these future devices. A lot of people were like, oh, so this is just going to be another V1 product that's buggy out of the gate. And, I can't see into the future. It may be buggy out of the gate, but talking to people internally, all of the software work they've done on Duo 1 and Duo 2 so far will benefit Duo 3 or this foldable phone, as well as single screen slab phones. Any other form factor running Microsoft's version of Android will benefit as a result of the work they did with Duo 1 and Duo 2. Same goes for hardware design. Turns out there's not too much different between a phone with two halves with a single screen and one with two screens. The Microsoft's all of their engineering efforts into the first 2 or 3 Duos will, including Andromeda there, will benefit the design they go for with a single screen foldable. So internally, they do consider this a third generation Duo. All of the chops, all the stuff that they've worked on so far goes towards and builds out this third generation product. Whether or not they actually call it Surface Duo 3 is another conversation entirely. Microsoft may want to take this opportunity to sort of back off from the Duo brand, which has kind of been tarnished, and call it something else. So like a fresh new start. Here's the thing. Here's a great new thing. It builds off on what we've done before, but it answers all of the concerns that most people had. And maybe they could call it Surface Pocket or Surface Flex or whatever. There's loads of different names they could call it. But yeah, that is basically the story. Is they're moving to the single screen foldable. They're also looking at expanding the line to more form factors, including a slab phone. The dual screen vision does appear to be dead. The Neo was killed off ages ago at this point. And that's why I don't think the Neo is coming back. It's because the Duo is moving away from dual screen as well. So if that's why would the Neo need to exist at that point? But yeah, the dual screen vision does appear to be dead. There was a dual screen design for Surface Duo 3 that I'm told they had basically finalized on. It was basically a narrower and taller Duo with 2 screens, metal chassis, wireless charging. But that has been scrapped. They're not planning to ship that. There's no plan to ship dual screen phones as like a mid-range sort of thing, because they will still be too expensive. That's the other reason why they're doing this, right? Is to standardize on the components. There are already so many OEMs ordering these foldable screens in these certain aspect ratios that Microsoft can jump in on, and so they'll be cheaper to order versus what Microsoft does with the Duo, which is custom cut, custom sized screens that no other OEM is asking for. So Microsoft, when they put an order in for them, the price is a lot more, and as a result, the Duo is more expensive, and that also really doesn't help it, because obviously the Galaxy Fold is $200 more than the Surface Duo 2, and people look at that and go, I'll just spend $200 more for a phone that doesn't have a gap down the middle.
Right, and plus also by sourcing LG or Samsung displays that are already on production, you get reduced production constraints, availability, and issues. When you're doing custom boutique parts, you run into problems with manufacturing. Quality control is tougher. But when something is more mass produced, it's mass produced for a reason, which is they solve those problems, right? And they solve as you mentioned, they solve the problems of pricing too. It's literally trickle down tech. That's how all this stuff works, and it's like something comes out, we saw 4K displays come out, only high end, who got that first? High end components, right? You didn't go, 4K display, let's put it in the budget thing first. I think with OLED displays, certain processors, all this, it always starts at the most expensive thing. Everybody balks at the price. Oh my God, that's ridiculous. I'll never pay for it. And that goes on for a year or two. And then it starts to come down in price, and we start to see it go more mainstream. Now, I reviewed an HP laptop recently that has a 4K like OLED display, and you can get it for like $1,000, right? It's still not cheap, but that's like, it's a really good laptop, and you're getting a really quality display that was only available before, like $2,000 laptop. So that's how this tech works. We should also mention this will, of course, have an outside display. I got to like a little Twitter beef with someone who just didn't understand this concept, but this device only folds 180 degrees. This is not a wraparound device. It's not that technology. LG is working on that. They showed a prototype, but we've always said there's a difference between prototype and mass producing something. We're not there yet for that. Maybe someday. I could absolutely see maybe in 2 years when that technology is ready, Microsoft goes, yeah, we're waiting on that. We want that for our device, as other OEMs would be too. So, but this will have an external display. It has to have one because I
Yeah.
had this person was like, but does it? We don't know if it has a. I'm like, it has to. I'm like, how else you going to make a phone call on it? It's just, you're going to hold like a tablet up to an open tablet up to your ear. So yes, it has an external display. It'll be like current devices. You should also mention the aspect ratio. You're expecting, I believe, more taller and narrow. It won't be Samsung tall,
No, it won't be
narrow,
Samsung.
but it's not going to be the wide aspect ratio that we're accustomed to what Surface Duo and Duo 2, which
Yeah,
is a mixed blessing. Because I love the wide aspect ratio, and it's amazing to work on right up until you have to start typing. And typing is just not as good on Duo because it's so wide compared to narrower devices.
Yeah. Regarding the aspect ratio, I don't know. I don't have an exact aspect ratio. I don't even think Microsoft knows for sure yet. That's the other thing I wanted to mention. The reason we're not talking about like specs or specifics of the hardware is because we just don't know at this point. This is still quite early, and as a result of that, I'm not even sure this will be
Yeah,
ready by the end of this year. That's the
I
other
doubt it.
disappointing news. Yeah.
I
So
can't see
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, regarding the shape of it, basically sources have said the Vivo X Fold. If you take a look at a Vivo X Fold, that's kind of the shape it's going to be. So which I actually really like. I think the Vivo X Fold is a really nice shaped device. Same with the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2. Both of those are very similar, and I do like those aspect ratios. So it'll be okay, but it won't be like the Oppo Find N. Apparently, it won't be landscape by default,
Which is in some ways fine. Well, the Oppo Find N is also small. It's a small
it is small,
device. It
but
doesn't support.
I was kind of hoping they'd just do a bigger Oppo Find N, but apparently that's not what they. At
Yeah,
least currently, that's not what they've been thinking about.
that's why I was
that
hoping for
could
it too.
change, but as what I've been told is, it will be more like a Vivo X Fold type shape and size, which I'm not too against. I do like the shape of that, but there's also another aspect to this story, and that's regarding the software. Because obviously, and this is a question lots of people have, including Microsoft, is how do we differentiate our products when we're basically a copycat in a market full of foldables? Everyone's doing the same form factor at this point, including Microsoft. How does Microsoft differentiate? And a few people who I've spoken to seem to think software is where Microsoft is really going to excel, which is funny when you say that, because obviously the Duo 1, Duo 2 launch, and the software was arguably the worst part. But Microsoft seems to think that that's how they're going to excel. There's an initiative internally called Perfect Together, which is designed to essentially marry or integrate Microsoft's version of Android with Windows so that they talk to each other and exist like the same thing. Similar to how iPhone and Mac talk to each other and how you can share things between them, and they're very interoperable. Microsoft wants to do the same thing with its version of Android and Windows. And that integration goes both ways. There'll be more integrations within Windows, and Microsoft will do its own thing with Android to make it so that they talk to each other better, on top of what Windows Phone Link is already doing. I don't have specifics on that currently, but one thing I have heard, now this is really treading into, like, this isn't confirmed, or at least I've not been able to confirm it myself yet, but it's stuff that I've heard is stuff they want to sort of do, which is another reason why I think this won't be ready until 2024 at the earliest. Is, we've already seen what Microsoft did with Android 12L, which was give Android a sort of Windows 11 aesthetic. It's still very much Android, but some icons here and there, some shapes of buttons and stuff are Windows 11 reminiscent. What if Microsoft took that further to the point where they were able to bring a mobile optimized version of the Windows UI to Android on their Surface Duo 3 or whatever it's called? That's the kind of thinking that they have internally, as far as I'm aware. They're talking about basically Android, but it looks like Windows Phone, is what they're sort of talking about. And that, I think, is a really interesting way to differentiate, because it would be the only phone on the market that looks like Windows at that point. It will still be Android. It won't be able to run Windows apps, not locally anyway. Obviously, through the cloud, perhaps. But that is one way they could differentiate, because the thinking behind that is they want the phone to be the best phone for Windows PC users, which is a lot of people. And if the phone looks like Windows, if it's familiar to a Windows user, then that's the selling point. It's like, oh, I know how to use Windows. There's a phone there that looks like Windows. It has a taskbar or a dock along the bottom. It has a start menu or a launcher. The activity feed looks like the notification center, vice versa, like stuff like that. That will be one way they could differentiate, and it's something they have been discussing as far as I'm aware. But that won't be, if they were to do that, that would have to be timed with Windows Next Valley and that UI, which, funny enough, that UI is already being designed for foldables in mind. Like, we've already talked about this before. That UI is supposed to be designed for those sort of form factors. It would be quite easy for them to scale that down to a foldable phone at that point. So this is all the stuff they're talking about, and it's through software where they seem to think they could really excel and differentiate. Of course, there'll be a few hardware things that are specific to the Duo, which hopefully I'll be able to talk about soon if I can learn more about all that stuff. But I'm not worried about differentiation.
As soon as Panos goes around and slaps everyone for leaking info.
Yeah.
Actually, let me drop a thought bomb on you here. Thought bomb. Let's be realistic. This thing ain't coming out till 2024. I mean, I think we need to just get that out of the way. I'd be shocked if they can get it out by the end of the year, because
they could do a coming soon, but I doubt it.
Everything tells me, from my contact in this industry for many, many years, it takes about 16 to 18 months to deliver a phone from concept to shipping. And if they're literally in the planning stages right now, you're not getting that up by the end of the year. So let's just say, I even think the first half of 2024 that'd be nice, but I could see that slipping as well. I mean, I'm just trying to be realistic here with this stuff. That said, you mentioned about Windows 11 Next Valley, the UI stuff. What's stopping them from bringing back the original Duo of Duo? That is, we get this device, but we also now get the foldable screen surface running Windows 11. And we get that pairing again, because by that time, that market's going to be even more mature. We'll have more devices out there. It'll, like I said earlier, it would have this sort of synergistic effect. People are going to see how both fold and they look the same. They have the same design and they go together kind of thing. And they're going to share some UI elements that make them look similar. We already know Microsoft is going to need not only an Android design, but in trying to get Android to work better with Windows 11. So there could be even more deep linkage between that, and you have Intel Unison and all those kind of things that are happening. So do you think that's going to be something we can expect along with whatever this new phone is?
It would be so funny if they did the Neo Duo thing, but they're both foldable phones now. That would be foldable tablet/phone. That would be really interesting. But I don't know. I've not heard if Microsoft is planning to ship a foldable tablet in 2024. I think it's possible, especially if Windows Next Valley natively supports foldables. It would make sense for Microsoft to have some sort of flagship hardware to demonstrate that. But now you mention it, I think that would be a pretty cool thing for them to do, and the fall of 2024. But I don't know. I don't know if that's something they're gonna do. What I will say is, regarding the release time, Jay, you're probably right. I don't think the Duo 3 will be ready by the end of this year. But that slab phone that I mentioned perhaps could be. I've heard that they've been prototyping those for quite a bit longer, apparently. And so if Microsoft really wanted to fill a gap, they could get around to sort of putting that together and shipping that as a thing at the end of this year. I think it would be easy for them to do. And so maybe that could happen. I'm not entirely sure if that is going to happen. I know that was a conversation that I think they were having internally. But regarding this fall,
I also want to sorry, I just want to squash some, comments here. There's no chance, and don't ever expect them to release a Windows 11 operating system on a phone and then running Android, as an emulated system through it. That's not going to happen. Let that go. Set that thought into the sunset, push it off, let it die. It ain't going to happen. It's a dumb idea. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's a really dumb idea. And it's just not, I don't care how powerful ARM gets. It's a stupid idea. It's not going to happen. Let that thought go. Also, let the idea go of a dual boot phone. Dual boot phones are not ever going to be a thing. It's right up there with Linux as the desktop OS of the future. It's not happening. Let that thought go. They're not going to be doing stuff like that.
The phone will be Android, and if there is any sort of Windows app compatibility, it'll be through the cloud, Windows 365 or whatever it is. That's because let's be real here. At this point, now that UWP is no longer a thing, there are no apps on Windows that I would want to run on a phone. None. Quite simply, there are zero. Yeah. So if there was a scenario where I needed to access a Windows app, it would be a rare case, and therefore having the cloud there to be able to do that makes more sense than having an entire subsystem of Windows running underneath Android to do that, or vice, or having all of Windows running and then Android, which is where your apps will be running. It just makes no sense. So yeah, no, that's definitely not going to happen. It will be an Android device. It may look like Windows, which I kind of really hope they actually go down that route, because when the Duo launched, they were very clear about how, it's an Android device. We want it to look like an Android device. As far as I'm aware, that's out the window. They want to make the next one feel like a Microsoft thing. They want to make it look like a Surface. They want to make it look like Windows. I would really like to see how that goes.
I also want to push back a little bit on this idea. So there is a fair argument about how they're going to differentiate this device from Samsung's. Same thing with a single screen phone, right? What makes it unique and different? And that's definitely a problem. They do need to have something there. And this UI stuff may be that foot in the door to do that. But I want to say people are getting a little too this foldable, well, Samsung's already there.
Yeah,
and
right.
I kind of get it, but it's a weird argument because, when single screen smartphones came out, specifically the iPhone, how many of you were like, "Oh, we're done.
Right.
That's it. We don't need any more phones. We don't need bigger sizes. We don't need thinner. We don't need them to change. Let's just give it all to Apple. Let them do it." Of course not. Then Android phones came out. How many Android phones are there out there right now? Quite a lot. Why? Well, how come you all didn't just settle on Samsung's S21 and just go, that's it. That's the only phone we need. Why buy anything else? That's it. No, because people want different sizes. They want different capabilities. They want more or less cameras. They want different price points. So I kind of get this idea that they got to separate themselves a little bit from Samsung. Sure, absolutely. And the Google Pixel Fold, absolutely. And those are going to be tough cases to do, but different sizes, a more focus on pen and inking, making it look a little bit more like Windows 11 and interacting with Windows better on a deeper level, different price points, better designs, different camera options. It works better with Microsoft Teams, like Teams Mobile, which is a thing that's out now, right? So we can have different foldables. We don't need just one on the market. People the fact is the Fold 4, great, but you mentioned that price. It's still stupidly expensive. Yeah, if you do a trade-in, it helps a lot. But what is it, $1,800, $1,700? That's still way out of price. Now, Samsung will bring that price down, but a faster way to bring that price down is simply cut back on some components or, make it smaller. There's a lot of wiggle room here. We don't need just one Fold on the market. So yeah, I get Microsoft needs to differentiate themselves, but let's be clear. You all didn't settle on one single screen phone either. So I don't feel that argument carries a ton of water in criticizing whatever Microsoft comes out with.
Yeah, a lot of people were talking as if the foldable market was saturated and, been around for ages. The foldable market's still new and still quite niche. There's lots of room for innovation and improvement there. I don't understand why people think Samsung is. So here's how Microsoft really looks at it. It's Microsoft is very, US west of the world focused, and there's only one competitor in the US right now. It's Samsung. Google is about to launch their own foldable later this year. So in Microsoft's eyes, there's only really three competitors. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There is Xiaomi, there is Huawei, there is Oppo, who are doing amazing foldables in China, but they're all in China. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say just one area that they can improve upon, of course, is the biggest complaint about foldables was its durability of the display and the folding mechanism. One reason why Lenovo/Motorola is different from Samsung is the way their hinge works. When it expands in the device, it's actually pulling the display tautly. And as a result, you're getting less of a crease in the screen, whereas Samsung's relying on kind of more of the teardrop method, where it's putting the extra slack in the hinge and then it opens up and then you get a bigger gutter. So, a lot of people complain about this. If I'm like, well, if you look at what the Chinese brands are already doing, like Oppo and stuff like that, they've already kind of solved these problems. Yeah. The Lenovo X1 Fold basically solves this problem. That crease is barely visible. Yeah, it's still technically there, still can be improved, but it's a world of difference from what Samsung has done. So there's a lot of improvements here in the hinge, the reliability, the functionality of the display, the pen and inking stuff, where you put the pen, of course. There's a lot of differentiation that can still happen here.
Yeah, and I do want to also mention as well for existing Duo customers. I know it's also been quite hard to find new Duos. That's because Microsoft isn't making any more, as far as I'm aware. And there's a few reasons for that. It's not because they're not committed. It's just because from a business standpoint, it doesn't make sense anymore. The device is over a year old. Unlike the PC space, where buying a year-old PC or a 2-year-old PC is kind of fine and no one really cares. Buying a year-old phone doesn't make any sense to most people, especially at full price. Now, we've talked about this before about how the Duo 2 the margins on Duo 2 were quite tight at the launch price of $1,500. I think it was $1,500 or $1,400, whatever it was. So when they slashed it to $999, I'm almost certain they were either making no money or losing money on each unit sold. So once they depleted stock, the question is then asked, okay, we can order, say, 5,000 more or 10,000 more for this amount of money. Now, if we order that and sell it at $999, again, we're going to be in the red at that point. Or we can order them, sell them at full price. Problem with that is that nobody's going to buy a Duo 2 for $1,500 now that they've seen it on sale for $1,000 a year after it launched. They will order those units and they'll be in the red because nobody's going to buy that additional stock. So it's a catch-22 situation.
And now all that does make sense why we didn't see them put another order in. Someone's mentioning this in comments that they're kind of getting a little bit bored, with their device and itching for something else. I've said that too. I picked up the Pixel 7. I was just kind of curious about the Pixel 7 and see where Google is. My last one was like a Pixel 4. And it's my main phone now. And it's not because I don't like the Surface Duo 2 anymore. It's just I'm so into tech. my laptops change every 2 months, right? Whatever my main laptop is right now will be different in 3 months, right? And same with my desktop, situation. I'm always moving on to new tech. So I do get bored quickly. And I'm privileged enough to have access to newer technology. So I'm using the Pixel 7. But, you and I have both said this. If a Duo 3 came out right now and was, just upgraded internals and all the small improvements, I'd be totally on that instead, But, that's just my privileged lifestyle coming into effect. So I get what we are on that. Something's over a year old. It's like, I need something new now. And people listening to this podcast, most of you, I'm going to say, fall into that category probably too.
I think so too. I'm the same. I'm tempted to move away from the Duo. I even I bought this Nothing phone recently. I'm not using it as my main phone yet, but I really like the design of this phone. I think it's a really nice looking phone. And for 400 quid, it's amazing what you get for your value these days. The
Pixel 7 at $500 is just that's crazy too.
But as you mentioned, that's actually a good criticism on Microsoft. Like Microsoft should, it does look like they fumbled this a bit in regards to timing of things. Like, sure, they skipped out 2022. The Duo Chronos was supposed to come out at the end of last year, I think it was. No, or the end of 2020. I can't remember the timing for things now. The year 2022 was supposed to be a gap. Eventually, Chronos was supposed to be 2020. Oh, right, I remember now. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. So, remember the Duo Chronos? For those who don't know, Chronos was supposed to be this mid-range Surface Duo 2. That was sort of conceptualized and developed, started development while the Surface Duo 2 was almost finishing development. So the Duo 2 came out in late 2021, and before the Duo 2 came out, Chronos was supposed to ship at the end of 2022. Then the Duo 2 came out, and reviews bombed, essentially. It wasn't great. Microsoft was sort of taken aback, I think, by the mostly negative or mixed reviews of the Duo 2, especially considering the Duo 1's reviews are so optimistic. When Duo 2 came, the reviews were a little less optimistic and a lot more, why does this even exist? And so Microsoft was like, this is a problem. So as far as I'm aware, in late 2021, they I guess, called a meeting or sent an email, I don't know how these announcements are made, where they were like, okay, we're going to push on the brakes here. We're going to step back and rethink our strategy. 2022 will be a year of software investment, and that's what we've seen. That's what Android 12L is. We're going to fix out the software. We're going to give ourselves a stable foundation for whatever we do next. And then throughout 2022 was when they were prototyping the foldable Surface Duo 3. As I mentioned, they already sort of had an idea for what the dual screen Surface Duo 3 was going to be, and they did work on that throughout 2022 as well. But then it just came down to, okay, what path are we going to take here? We're going to go foldable. And so the flagship Duo 3 with the dual screens was scrapped. Obviously, Chronos was put on hold, or rather scrapped, in late 2021 because of the Duo 2 reception. And they basically decided, the Duo line is not yet ready, thanks to the software, to be a mid-range / almost mainstream product. We need to focus on the software, and we can come back in. The idea would have been late 2023 with a flagship and be like, hey, now we've really got it going. Now we'll see whether that happens. It's more likely going to be 2024, but yeah, it's a real mess. It's a shame for people who did buy into the Duo One specifically, because the Duo One exits support this September. And also, Duo One customers would have, a lot of them in America would have ordered on AT&T, so they may have even signed into a 2-year contract. So not having a new device to jump to is really kind of sucky for them. Duo 2 customers may be a bit more okay, because obviously the Duo 2 will be around until end of 2024 regards to software support. And software support will continue. That's the other thing I wanted to highlight. Microsoft isn't giving up on the Duo as it currently exists. They're going to continue. It's a great, this is how they're building out their Android vision, and they're using the Duo to do it right now. So Duo 1 and Duo 2 should get Android 13 or Android 14 at the very least for the Duo 2. Duo 1 might not get Android 14, but it might. I don't know. But Android 15 is definitely on the cards for the Duo 2. So, if you have a Duo 2 today, you can keep using it. It will still be getting updated. It will get new features. Like they totally have new features and stuff planned for the Duo going forward. So, yeah, their phone business isn't dead. This isn't the end of the road. It's just a change in strategy for the form factor. And the change is rooted in the fact that they want to expand this business. They want to make a successful phone business. And I think that's ultimately a good thing, even if it does mean that the actual form factor, the dual screen form factor, which we have been talking about since 2016 under the codename Andromeda, is finally put to rest. Let's be honest. The Duo really releasing was because of sunk cost fallacy from Andromeda. They were developing that for so long, and I think they just had tunnel vision. Like, we need to do this. But by the time they were able to do it, the Galaxy Fold had already been announced, and it was already technically in superior. So it's just bad timing on Microsoft's front.
All right, listen, I'm bored with Duo.
Okay, we can move on.
We've just talked about it for almost 45 minutes.
That's why most people are here, though. So
maybe. I feel like a lot of people are probably like, all right, I don't care anymore about this phone that will no longer exist. All right, let's go to Windows 11 updates. We got to go through that. What's happened with the Windows 11 news, and then we'll turn to those Apple apps.
Yeah, well, this is real quick, but really, it does appear that Microsoft is planning significant work to the File Explorer in addition to what they've already done so far with Windows 11. So Windows 11 launched, we know they sort of modernized the header of the app. The top part with the buttons and whatnot was modernized, and then they added tabs. But the rest of it, everything below the header was still old school File Explorer. It's from Windows 10, Windows 8 days. Not much had changed with it. With the 22H2 update, they added a new Home tab, but it's still very much the old UI. It's just in there now. And it does look like they're actually going to, I guess, complete the modernization of File Explorer and update the rest of it. References and early mock-ups of modern versions of the rest of File Explorer have been spotted in the latest dev channel builds. And yeah, it looks great. The details pane is not working yet, but you can enable it in the latest dev channel build. It's all placeholder text, but it looks nice. And the rest of it does look like they're going to update the folder view. They're going to update the home tab, the other sidebar where all your sort of shortcuts are for your different folders. And they're also apparently adding a gallery tab into the File Explorer as well, which I think is what macOS has in Finder. It's basically just going to be you can view your photos. You can, I think, so I've seen concepts of this. I don't know if this will actually ship, but you'll be able to hover over like a photo in the gallery view, and it will make it bigger rather than having to double click it to open it and stuff. Like you'll get a bigger view of it, which is nice. And also, I've also heard that this, actually, I'm quite surprised this stuff is showing up in the builds now, because I had originally heard about this stuff for Next Valley. They may be bringing it forward, I don't know, but it's supposed to be all touch friendly and stuff, and all the animations supposed to be nice, so it's going to be great. But yeah, that's basically the only thing I wanted to highlight, is that they are working on a major redesign for the rest of File Explorer that will bring it in line with the current Windows 11 design language, which is pretty nice.
That's it?
Yep.
All right, fair enough. Let's go to the Apple app. So this was talked about, of course, in the fall 2022 at the Surface event. It was pretty surprising, actually, because part of that announcement was the idea of Apple Photos, iCloud Photos, coming to OneDrive support. So those two things integrate. You can view your photos from your iPhone into OneDrive. It was really cool, surprising stuff that happened. But the other half of that story was Apple was going to release native apps for Windows 11 for its major services. And this is kind of a scratch record moment, I think. And it was just like, okay, well, let's wait and see what happens there. Because up until this point, we had that dreadful, awful app, iTunes, just floating around on Windows, and that thing is just, gross. It's something from like 15 years ago. And so the apps finally came out. They are in preview. I should caution, asterisk here. It's only available in the US, but that's because they're preview. Sorry about that. But if you're in the US, you can get this. We have the article up on the site. You can just go download the links. I'm sure if you really want, you can probably find the install files maybe somewhere on the internet. But they came out with Apple Music, Apple TV, and Apple devices. The first two are pretty self-explanatory. Apple Music is basically the new iTunes, and it's their streaming service, but you can also have your own content on there as well, and it streams it. It's all really super good quality. The other one, Apple TV, is actually, I think, more interesting because Apple TV actually does have some pretty good content. They did bump their price from $4.99 a month to $6.99 a month, which makes it a little bit less attractive, but still in that category of like, I could maybe swing that. But they have a lot of good shows, a lot of good movies. That app does support 4K HDR content as well, and plus you get access to, your Disney content if it's on there, which is kind of cool. And I think all your movies that you may own, if you link your stuff all together via, was it Movies Now? Oh, I forgot the name of that service, the one that links everything. And then, of course, there's Apple devices, which is doesn't work for me, but then Sarah from comments was telling me that if you install iTunes and you had to install a driver or something like that, it starts to work. But this app is simply shows the status of like your iPhone, your iPad, I think your watch, basically your battery storage and all that, and where it may be in its status, which is kind of cool to have. As Macs do this already, they have that little window, so that's kind of a cool thing. What's nice about these apps, they're built on using a new, Microsoft SDK, App SDK. And so that's the follow-up, that's what UWP's successor is basically. It's a combo of Win32 and UWP features. So this has some like acrylic effects. The apps look like native Windows 11 apps. That's what's really cool about them. They don't look like some weird Apple monstrosity and like some weird special borders and menus. They look like they have familiar menus, familiar layouts, familiar media players. I will say the Apple TV, of course, it does full screen and it does windowed, but it also does the mini player because, again, it's using this SDK, so they can just leverage that. That mini player is a little tiny floating window you can kind of resize, but it sits on top of whatever window it is. So, like, if you're working in Word, you can have this thing playing in the corner of your screen or whatever. You just drag and drop wherever you want it to be on your display. So it's a really cool thing if you like to multitask. But yeah, overall, these, I'm really surprised and glad that Apple didn't, basically half-ass this, right? They didn't just come out with their own, no, we're going to do it our way. No, they bought into Microsoft's latest app system and are using all the latest technologies. The apps look great. They function well. And, I'm pretty excited about them.
If only Google could do the same.
Right. Yeah, although, I kind of get that. It would be nice if Google did that, no doubt about it. But I will say if you still are really, hooked on that idea, just use Microsoft Edge. You can actually use Chrome. Go to Google's pages, whether it's Gmail, YouTube, Photos, create a PWA. Google has leveraged PWA technologies. They're on the cutting edge of them, and all their services make excellent PWAs. Then it'll create a separate app. You can pin it to your taskbar, your desktop. It'll be in the start menu. And then you can just launch it as a regular app. And, the PWA technology is getting there. It would be nice if those were in the store, just like the Twitter one, but you can do this yourself. I get it would still be nice to have like a native Google app, for maps or something like that. But you can just like create it yourself right now. And you could have done that for the last year or two. So I would say do that. But, for something like Apple TV, yeah, that one's a little tricky. They could have done a PWA for that probably if they wanted to, but they did a nice job with this. So I'm pretty excited. Hopefully these will roll out to other regions in the coming weeks and months. But right now they're technically in preview/beta stage. But they look great, and thanks Apple. So nice to see that.
You need to do an ad read.
Oh, yeah, okay. Let me do that. I got to bring that up, I guess. Where is that file? Okay, here we go. Yeah, we do have an ad read. Unfortunately, it's not the the Manscaped. They'll be back next week, though, so tune in for that one. But this app got investors over 13% returns. That's right, over 13% returns. Not once, not twice, but 6 separate times this year. It's true. Forbes recently covered an app called Masterworks, whose last 3 exits netted investors 13, 17, and 21% returns. Sounds unbelievable until you learn that the contemporary art prices outpace the S&P 500 even during the bull run of the last decade. Masterworks offerings are all SEC qualified with over 600,000 users. They even sold out in less than an hour. But when you download the Masterworks app, tell them Windows Central Podcast sent you and you'll unlock priority access. See important Regulation A disclosures at masterworks.com masterworks.com/CD. Remember, download the Masterworks app. Tell them Windows Central Podcast sent you. So this is, I've talked about this before, but it's actually kind of cool. If you want to like invest money and not do it through the stock market, this is it's a way I hadn't thought about before, but they take really famous art pieces and they divvy them up and you buy a percentage of that art piece. And you're now an investor in that artwork. If that artwork goes on to then sell at a higher rate, which is historically what happens to a lot of famous art, that's the play here, is that art doesn't depreciate. And, it's not like the stock market. It's always basically going up. It's not like, the Mona Lisa is now less affordable today than it was 20 years ago. It's more affordable. So then you get returns on when those pieces of artwork sell and you get that deposit to your account. It's kind of a cool way to invest. I think it's pretty interesting. So that's Masterworks. But go there, download the app. It's on iOS and Android and tell them Windows Central Podcast sent you. We'll really appreciate it. And if you make some money, hey, let me know on Twitter because I'm kind of interested in that. All right, moving on. Let's talk about HoloLens is getting more bad news. You covered this story, but this has to do with the U.S. Army contract. So, this is in the HoloLens 3 and stuff we're talking about in the consumer stuff, but this is about the U.S. Army contract. So what's going on there? There's been some bad reports, soldiers getting sick and nauseous, saying that they were actually to use this on the battlefield, they would be dead, which is not a good look. But what's happening now?
Yeah, so Bloomberg reports that the U.S. Army will not be placing any more orders for HoloLens units until a few critical issues are addressed in an updated version. Bloomberg says this newer version is dubbed version 1.2 of the military grade HoloLens, that is, which is quite a bit different. I think it's based on HoloLens 2, but the hardware is very different.
Yeah, it's almost like a 2.5.
Yeah. According to the Bloomberg, the report said Congress has rejected the U.S. Army's request for $400 million to buy as many as 6,900 of them this fiscal year. The rejection of the request in the $1.75 trillion government funding bill reflects concerns over field tests of the goggles, which are adapted from Microsoft HoloLens headsets. The test disclosed mission-affecting physical impairments, including headaches, eye strain, and nausea. So this is from they did a test last year with 70 infantry soldiers, and after they used them for 3 days straight, I'm pretty sure, and by the end of it they were like, "This is, my eyes hurt, I can't see anymore, help me." And to be fair, I totally get them. I've used the HoloLens 1 quite a bit in its time, and after 30 minutes my eyes start to feel quite tired looking at those things. So I can't imagine how they felt after 3 days of wearing it basically non-stop. But I don't know how Microsoft addresses this, because I just think this is a problem with projecting things this close to your eyeballs while tricking your brain into trying to focus on it at a further distance. I don't know how you get around it.
Yeah, it's a challenge. The technology still needs to evolve and just become more comfortable, and wider field of view is going to be another super important thing. So it's important to keep this is a partnership. They're working back and forth, and Microsoft will take this feedback. It would have been nice, if out the gate the soldiers could just use this, but that's not the case. And if you think about how ruggedized they got to make the darn thing, it makes sense. They still got the contract though. Still no immediate competitors in that space. So it's a setback. Huh?
The competitive thing might change this year.
What do you think? What with Apple?
Well, Vive just announced or maybe it wasn't just announced. I only just heard about it. You had the Vive XR Elite. Is it called? Give me one.
Is that from HTC?
Yes.
So they're not going to use HTC.
Oh, okay. Well, there's also Meta. I'm not saying the U.S. Army. Sorry, I'm not saying they're going to do that. I'm just saying the competition in this space is going to
Sure.
heat up this year. And, maybe in a few years when there is another massive contract to be had, Microsoft will no longer be the first choice in that.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I still think Microsoft is still way ahead on this technology, between everything, else. But yeah, I mean, you're right. But as I keep saying, none of this changes until Apple releases their thing for the consumer market, at least. And I think
Yeah.
that will sort of, because even at CES, which we'll get to in a moment here, there was tons of AR and VR everywhere. It was all from these little companies, and they're all creating pieces of technology that's really unique. But none of these are going to catch on. What's going to happen is these companies and these technologies will be sold off to the bigger companies. It's going to take Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta to bring something to market for this to hit mainstream, maybe Samsung as well. So we're still waiting for that moment.
It does certainly appear, we've talked about this before, but it does appear that the next step in this AR journey is hybrid devices, VR headsets that can do AR as well. And
Sure.
Obviously we've seen the Meta Quest Pro, which I think launched for $1,500 or something like that. This Vive XR Elite is £1,300. I don't know if it's the same in bucks. But these are considerably cheaper than what Microsoft sells with the HoloLens 2, being a AR only device. But then also Apple's rumored to be launching a $3,000, $4,000
Yeah, $3,000.
I think Apple's gonna price themselves out the market if that's what they're actually planning to do.
I think it has 18 cameras or something like that. The rumor is.
Theirs might be just stupidly advanced.
Yeah,
that might be call it the price of it.
Like it has cameras to see your legs.
Does it really? Jeez.
Like to point down so that it can simulate you in a metaverse.
Yeah, that's actually such an Apple thing to focus on, because obviously one of the big criticisms with Facebook's or Meta's thing is that there's no legs,
legless.
And the fact that they were working on legs was apparently a huge announcement. Trust Apple to come out the gate, but we got legs nailed, mate. No worries.
Yeah, we just added cameras that film your legs
exactly
walking. I mean, I get it. It's all right, that works, but. And that doesn't seem like the future to me. If you explain to me how this stuff works, you showed a metaverse thing and people walking around on it. You're like, yeah, we do that because we have cameras that.
The worst thing is I got to pay.
I'd be like, really?
Yeah, I got to pay for those.
I don't know how you would solve this. I don't know how else you're supposed to solve this. That seems lame.
Well, here's what you do: is you don't solve it and just don't care, because if I'm paying $200 for 2 additional camera sensors to look at my legs all the time, I'm not going to be chatting to you in VR anyway. So can we have a version without those cameras on the bottom, please?
I'll tell you how you actually really solve this problem, and we just don't have the technology for it. It's going to be a neural net that's on your head, and you pick up the electrical signals from your legs when they're moving.
That's wild, yeah.
And translate that into digital. That's how you solve this stuff. That's how you solve all of these things, but we're still a long time from that.
Yeah.
So
that's more sci-fi at this moment in time.
yeah, but it sure beats having cameras that film your legs. So there we go.
It's so basic
all right.
on paper.
yeah, we just had cameras everywhere. We'll have 20 cameras on the thing, and it'll just film everything, and we'll just process that. And then they wonder why their CPUs are running really hot, because apparently that was one of the complaints. Anywho, let's go to the cool news. So this was CES now. So the big news at CES was something I talked about in the last podcast, or at least I hinted at. I was like, ooh, something big is returning. It's going to make a lot of people excited. And I was like, it's not Windows Phone. But it was this. It was a Lenovo YogaBook 9i. So this is basically your Surface Neo. But I'm going to be flat, no shade to Microsoft, but this is a better version of that. And I don't just mean because it's a better processor. My problem, the Neo looked great, but in handling it, it's a very small device. It's very much like a Surface Go, in terms of sizing, if you can imagine that. Obviously, it's a little bit smaller. So, yeah, the keyboard worked, but when you put this thing on your lap, you're doing that scrunchy thing, I'm scrunched and hunched over it. And it was like, I can imagine using this in a meeting or something like that. It would be cool. But am I going to want to use this all the time as my laptop? No, because I do like 14 inches around that size for a display when I'm doing long-term work. That's the sweet spot. Everybody knows this. OEMs know this, which is why you see so many now 14-inch laptops on the market. So anyway, this is different. This is the YogaBook 9i. This is different from their ThinkPad X1 Fold, which is an enterprise device with a single screen foldable. That's still coming out, believe it or not. It hasn't actually come out. They've been a little bit delayed. I do hear that shipping in the next couple of weeks, and we'll get our hands on it, of course. But that's more the enterprise play. This is the consumer play. It's a yoga book. That's their consumer market. Yoga Book 9i. So that's the name. It's got 2 displays, and in the middle. So this was a yoga book, the yoga thing for a while. Instead of a 360 hinge, they would make the hinge into a giant speaker that was like Dolby certified and all this kind of stuff. And it was awesome because that speaker then could like follow when you would flip it into a tablet mode, the speaker would come along with it. And it was like you had all this sound just aimed at your face, which is what you want for speakers. There's a really brilliant rethinking of what a hinge should be. And this has that. This has down the middle. This hinge is the speaker bar, which is kind of brilliant. All right, so what are the specs here? So the displays, they're 2 13.3-inch, 2.8K OLED at 16 by 10 aspect ratio. So these are really nice displays. I got to see this device in person, play with it. It's really kind of cool. 400 nits of brightness, 100% DCI-P3, 60Hz refresh, HDR, PureSight, Dolby Vision, blah, blah, blah. It runs an Intel Core 13th gen, by the way, 13th gen mobile announced at CES. Core i7 U15 processor, so it's a U series, not a P series. That's actually good in my opinion. I think U series are really performance, and it means you should also get good battery life because now you're powering 2 displays on this thing. You also got 2 2-watt speakers, 2 1-watt speakers, so a total of 4 speakers that are Bowers and Wilkins made by them. Also supports Dolby Atmos, 5 megapixel front-facing camera with RGB. You have an 80-hour battery life, Wi-Fi 6E. The whole thing weighs 3.04 pounds. So it's not the lightest laptop, but that's right in the middle. That's that nice spot where it's like, okay, 3 pounds. That's actually pretty nice. Folds up into a beautiful like book that you can hold, and it's thin. It's got rounded edges around it. It's thin bezels. Now, what's cool about this is it is arguably the most versatile PC you're going to be able to buy. So this thing can be used like Surface Neo. Put it on your lap, fold it. You got one screen on top, one screen on the bottom. You can then pull up the software keyboard, and it does what Neo does, where you put your fingers down. I think it's like 4 fingers, or sorry, 8 fingers. I've got the gestures, and then you can bring up the keyboard, and then you can slide the keyboard up onto that display, and it'll create you have a virtual touchpad, so you can just move around like that. Or say you're at a desktop and you want to use a mouse, you can bring that keyboard down closer to you, and then that top space becomes a place for widgets. And they created a bunch of cool widgets. You got like your weather, you can view your email inbox, you can view your calendar appointments, you can view system status, and like you have like all these kind of like different widgets you can kind of put up there. I have photos of it with the weather. You have the news coming up, which is really kind of cool. So that's when you're sitting at the desk and you're using a mouse and you're using that keyboard. Now, if you don't like a software virtual keyboard, fully understandable. This has a physical keyboard, just like what Neo had. That's Bluetooth, sticks onto it with magnets, and it does the same thing. You can put it on the lower screen, and then you'll have those widgets on top of it, or you can push it forward, and now you're going to have that virtual touchpad. So that combo right there is going to be basically a traditional laptop. Say you get to your desk and you want to use this thing. Well, now it has a origami type stand that folds out, and you can put this so you have 2 vertical screens side by side, and you can just work like that, and then use the physical keyboard, have a mouse, and all that kind of stuff, and you're going to get this like really kind of cool 2 13-inch displays. Or you can flip it the other way, right? And have the screens on top of each other and work that way. So, or you can hold it like a book. And they did a lot of cool software tricks. Even just the screen itself has like the default wallpaper is like an animated wallpaper of a butterfly that's cut right down the middle. So you get that symmetry effect. And then when you open and close it, the butterfly's wings like flap like according to how close it is. It looks really, I put it on my Twitter. You can kind of see what it looks like. No word on pricing. It should be out later spring, I would imagine. It does support pen and inking, of course, as you would expect. So this thing has got full pen support. And you can even kind of use it without the keyboard for pen, which is kind of cool. So they have like these gestures where you drag up from the corner with the pen, and you can do like a screenshot automatically, or you can bring up the pen menu. So you don't need to rely on like touching the screen or using keyboard shortcuts. So you can just use this thing, just two screens and a pen, and just do screenshots and navigate around. They thought of some really pretty cool stuff here. So it's a beautiful blue color. Yeah. So why I like it better than Neo, besides the hardware just being faster, this runs full Windows 11, of course. So this isn't a compromised weird Windows 10X thing where we had to get into containerized Win32 applications and that whole thing. I think the battery life will probably be better too, but this thing is going to be really powerful. Also, the displays are way bigger. This is like
Yeah.
it's a laptop, right? This is just a standard laptop, but it's thin and at only 3 pounds, it's not particularly heavy. So I'm really excited about this. I think this is, like I said, Surface Neo on steroids is kind of what we call it, and it's a better version of the Neo. So sorry, Microsoft, but good on Lenovo. Zach, what do you think about this baby?
I do like the look of the hardware, but as we discussed before, Windows is just currently not ready for this form factor. And if you watch all the video, I know they probably say it's pre-release software and stuff. What
Oh yeah,
Lenovo's
yeah.
doing is building its own apps and softwares and experiences to bend Windows into adapting to this form factor. That's what they're
Sure.
doing. If you watch the videos, you see them rotate the different orientations or move into different modes, and the whole thing looks very clunky. Again, maybe they'll improve it before it ships,
It
but
really isn't. I'll be honest. When I used it's way more polished than I thought it would be. Like there's cool stuff you can do. Say you have Microsoft Edge, like you have it like in laptop mode, one screen on top, the other screen flat, right? Like on your
yeah,
lap, right? And you have like Edge open on that full top screen. You can use a gesture, and I'm forgetting what the gestures were. I think it's four fingers.
to extend it.
You touch the screen and you swipe it down, and then what happens is Edge is going to fully expand to
Yeah,
both screens. And like you can, there's ways of snapping apps that you can do with the dragging. And right, can this be improved? Of course it can, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually thought it was a lot more polished than I was expecting.
What I'm primarily referring to is the animations involved, because you see what Android's doing, and you imagine what Apple would do if they were doing this. Everything would be so fluid; it would all be just seamless and stuff. You see the videos, and you do the gestures and stuff, and the screen might flash, and then it pops down at the bottom. There's no like elegance to it, and that's not
Yeah,
Lenovo's fault. That's Windows' fault for not
yeah,
natively supporting this stuff, and these are the problems I'm going to have with these devices as they come out. Until Windows is like, actually, yeah, let's support these devices natively, because it would be so nice if instead of using Lenovo's touch keyboard, it would just use the Windows one. They did it with Surface Neo. That was the built-in Windows keyboard. It had the little wonder bar thing along the top. Lenovo's essentially copied that vision and done it themselves. I'm not saying Lenovo's coding skills are worse than Microsoft, but it just would be nice if there were native versions of this that they could utilize rather than having to build out their own stuff, because it would be easier for other OEMs who may not be as able to build out software experiences. Like just having Windows be able to support this stuff out of the box would be easier for OEMs as well, instead of having to build out this entire suite of software just to force Windows to do what it's told for this form factor. I just think it's a shame. It looks great, the hardware, and until Windows supports it, I'm not going to buy one.
yeah. I mean, don't forget, we're definitely going to review this, obviously,
Yeah.
but I'm actually kind of excited about this. This feels like the first. This feels way more pragmatic, even more than the ThinkPad X1 Fold, to be honest. I feel like this is actually kind of a really cool thing. But you're 100% right. Obviously, Windows 11, but that's what Lenovo does. Lenovo gets out there in front of
They do,
everybody,
yeah.
and they try to be the tip of the spear. And they're like, we're going to try this, see what happens, and we'll get feedback. And then Microsoft's only going to approve it so much if there's something out there, and if this thing does pretty well and they get feedback, Microsoft likes it, and they're like, okay, we can do something with this. They'll start to do change, but someone's got to take the lead on it. It's hard to make the software work when you don't have the hardware. So,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, Windows developers, just imagine there's two screens. Now make up some gestures and
Yeah.
hopefully they work. But I'm sure Windows devs will be getting these devices and like, all right, let's see what we can do with this, even with the Surface team. So I'm pretty stoked about
The
it.
thing with PCs as well, PC-sized dual screen devices. It's so actually funny how like the Duo is moving away from dual screen, just as Lenovo brings back the Neo. But honestly,
Yeah,
I think the dual screen aspect kind of probably could work better as PCs, only because the spanning capability is less necessary because you've already got a
right.
massive screen, so you don't need two massive screens to have an app that already looks great on one massive screen. So the
Yeah.
spanning capability, Microsoft doesn't even need to worry about anymore. Just scrap that idea and just focus on the multitasking aspect, and adapt Windows to that. Basically, all I want Windows to natively support is the ability to determine the posture the device is currently in and whether or not a keyboard is laying on one side of the screen, and then present the Wonder Bar. Basically, what the Neo did, or less. Take what the Neo did and what Windows was doing on the Neo. Take away the spanning capability, and that's all that I think needs to be done. Like, if you fold it over,
The rule
and
of thumb.
go on.
Yeah, the rule of thumb for this stuff should be a device like a Surface Pro 10, Surface Pro 9, a device like that size, foldable, single screen foldable. When they get
Yes.
bigger, 13, 14, 15-inch, then you can do a dual screen.
Yeah,
I
I think
think,
so.
two
Yeah.
separate screens. I think that makes total sense. Like, and that's what makes devices like these 17-inch foldables a little weird.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
then you have like this giant 17-inch tablet. And it does make sense from that one perspective of like, well, if you're going to use this as like a desktop PC, like if I got to a hotel room and then I put this thing on the stand and I'm using a keyboard, like, okay, that's kind of cool. So that is one effect. That's one option you can have and why a single screen makes sense. But I think in pragmatically speaking, what Lenovo is doing here is pretty clever. So
Yeah. On the subject, while we're briefly talking about this sort of half leads into the CES thing I wanted to talk about. Is Samsung Display highlighted a bunch of different foldable tech displays that they can now achieve. Now, I don't think we're going to see most of these in any products for a while, but they were showing off rollable screens that expand, screens that can go up and down, or screens obviously like you fold out, and also 360-degree foldable screens. And obviously, one of the things when we were talking, when I did my Duo report earlier this year, was people were hoping that if they were going to move to a single screen foldable, would it be a 360-degree foldable? I'm told no, that it won't be. Probably because I think this device will be ready before that stuff is really able to be produced at scale for a reasonable price. I still think these 360 degrees folding screens are going to be super expensive. And also, not only that, but I imagine the IP rating, the water and dust resistance there, it just isn't there for those devices yet. And that's something Microsoft kind of wants to get right with the next one. So... But they are. I think they're definitely going to happen. I reckon maybe Duo 4 or Duo 5 could certainly be a 360-degree foldable. I just don't think that. I don't think the market is ready for that yet. I don't even think the Galaxy Fold 5 or 6 will be there. I think that's a down the road thing. It's just that the tech is being presented now because it's something they can finally achieve technically. I just don't think it's something that monetarily makes sense to produce for people to buy yet.
Yep. And now let's move on to other CES stuff. So, of course, that was the big news, I would say, or at least the more interesting thing. By the way, I did turn off my creepy eyes because even I was getting weirded out by that. So this article is going to go up after the podcast, but these were our best of. So this is the stuff you should kind of pay attention to. So one is, next one would be the LG's new monitor, the Ultra Gear OLED. It's specifically LG Ultra Gear 45 GR95 QE. Write that down. We will be getting this in for review. So this is a mammoth 45-inch 21:9 display with a WQHD resolution of 3440 by 1440 and a very bendy 800R curvature. So this thing is pretty curvy. That's what that number is. But and having seen this, it's a pretty curvy display. All right. So, but you've all probably heard of that before. It's like, okay, well, I mean, ultra wides aren't new, and especially 45-inch. It's actually almost kind of small. Well, what makes this one is interesting is two things. One, it's an OLED display, which is, chef's kiss, just absolutely brilliant looking. But it supports, for the first time, a 240 hertz refresh rate with a 0.03 millisecond response time. That makes it the ultimate display, in my opinion, for gaming. So yeah, you can use this for content creation too, because the color accuracy of this thing will be off the charts. But at 240 hertz and OLED, and at this size, and it's curved, I sat behind this thing and got to play some video games. It was just like, yes, this is what I want. They showed me also their 27-inch version of this. It's just a flat 27. They're like, whoa, we have OLED 20. So there's a regular monitor. I'm just like, boring. I'm like, send me that curved one. I'm like, because that curved one, when you sit behind it, it's just like this thing almost wraps around. OLED looks absolutely amazing at this size. And the 240 hertz refresh is just like when you're gaming and there's no blurred, all that kind of stuff. It's just What a sick monitor. I think this thing is great. There was I forgot what other company made. Basically, they used LG's panel. They made it like flexible so it could go
Yeah.
flat or curved. I didn't highlight that. It was a neat trick. I don't see a lot of people using that though. I don't see a lot of cases where necessarily you want the curved display flat. But if you want that, that exists too. But they're using just LG's display here for that anyway. So, but yeah, that's the LG curved display. I'm gonna be getting that for review. Super excited. Razer crushed it. So, and we're not just saying this because we're big fans of Razer around here, but they really released some cool stuff. All right, so Razer Kaio Pro Ultra. They've had the Razer Kaio, the Razer Kaio Pro. I'll be honest, I gave those mediocre reviews. We talked about them in the past. They were okay. They had some cool ideas, a cool design. The first one had a ring light around it, which is kind of a clever idea. So you could turn the ring light on and adjust it, and it was the camera built in, so it was all one. It was great for streamers. But the quality of the lens, same with the next one, the Kaio Pro, it was fine, but there was much better stuff on the market. We're using still the Lumina AI 4K camera on this podcast because it's I think the best. Listen, I'm calling this right now. This is the best webcam you're going to be able to buy today, right? Or the next couple of months. It's over. This is it. Move over to Logitech. What they did, the Pro Ultra, it's a big camera, but it is literally you know how people would tell you, like, if you want the best webcam, you just get a DSLR and you put it on a tripod and you plug it in, but you can only use it for 30 minutes at a time because they get overheated. I never did that setup. I thought it was stupid, overkill, and obviously super expensive, and it was just a hack, right? This is that portable, and it's only $399. Still expensive, still way cheaper than a DSLR. But this thing, you can see that I'll share the photo of it later. It blurs the background, but it's not using software to blur it. The lenses on this are so big and so good. This has natural bokeh for the first
Wow.
time without using any software tricks. It's just naturally creamy and nice looking. I'll also say it's a 4K. It does true 4K raw output, I believe, at 60 frames per second or 30 or 24 frames. Like it does like this raw output on it. It's a single cord plug and play. When you instead of a ring light, when you twist the front elements, it's a real aperture. It really closes fully as an iris and acts as a privacy camera, which is really kind of cool. So there's nothing you got to slap onto it, no magnet. You just twist it and whoop, it closes, and that's it. So great for privacy. I forgot to ask if it has Windows Hello, Zach, though. I don't know actually, but
If it's not, then it's dead to me.
yeah, but the quality, I'm definitely going 100%, no argument, switching to this. We'll use that on the podcast. It's phenomenal looking. Like they had a live thing with it. We got to play with the lighting. We could do whatever we want. There was no software tricks. You don't even need to use the Razer software. It is literally plug and play. But we got to see it in low light and how it looked. And they had it on a big TV, so it was no like it was just fantastic. So that's the Razer Kaio Pro Ultra. Keep an eye out on that, $400. But if you're looking for the best webcam quality you can get, this is it. I'm telling you, there's nothing out that's coming out. Razer Edge, we knew about this for a while. It's gotten more official. This is the Android handheld thing for cloud gaming, so that's coming out now. I believe I've got the pricing on it. It's $299 or $399. They actually have a special deal for Verizon. Verizon in the US will have a 5G version, and it's actually I think it's $369 for that one. It's actually cheaper, and it's $10 a month for the 5G data, which is actually way cheaper than I thought it would be, especially with Verizon. But yeah, this thing runs a flavor of Android. The controllers come off of it, so you could just have the display, and that makes it more portable. Or if you just want to use on-screen controls, because it has a really good display. This is, I believe, an OLED display, and I believe I forgot the refresh rate on it. I think it's 240 hertz, or it's some like ridiculously high refresh rate. I got to play with this. It runs, of course, Xbox cloud gaming, or you can, if you're home on your own network, you can just stream your Xbox to it. It also does GeForce Now. It does whatever that's available for cloud gaming. It's just Android. You can just run that. And, of course, you can run all your Android games on it. And because a complaint we had with the Logitech G Cloud was, yeah, you could run Android games on it, but it sucks because a lot of Android games aren't optimized either for the physical controls or the touchscreen wasn't good enough to use the on-screen controls. This does all that, and they're even going to be they have a software that maps Android like controllers to certain Android games to make it viable on this device. It's thin. It just looks, the screen on it is so good. It's a great size. The controls felt great on it. I mean, this thing is just going to be killer. Uh, yeah, and it has local storage. You can actually download and install games on this. You can use it offline, and you can run emulators on it if you wanted to. They did mention that. They know it's a gray area, but yes, this thing can fully run emulators. You can do whatever you want with it. It's going to be a really cool handheld. I think this is a little bit more interesting than Steam Deck. Steam Deck's great. Don't get me wrong. It's really impressive what it can do and how powerful it can run. But if you're like always around on a Wi-Fi network, or you want that 5G version, like you're going to be able to just do more with this and kind of you're going to get better battery life with it too. So I think that's great. Razer Blade 16. They actually got out two new Razer Blades, Razer Blade 16 and Razer Blade 18. And don't get me wrong, the 18 is awesome too, but why I'm highlighting the 16, and they're not discontinuing the 15 either and the 14. They're still keeping all those. But the Blade 16 is a whole different beast now. It's obviously 16-inch, but that display is amazing. So it's got a 16 by 10 display, a first for Razer. They haven't done that for a while, but yes, this is now taller. So the bezel is like perfectly balanced on all sides. It's nice and thin. You don't got a chin anymore. It's just all display. But this display is magical, and it's the first time I've ever seen this. If you've the challenge in high-end laptops like the Razers was Razer attracts both gamers but also content creators. And it shouldn't surprise you that a lot of those people are the same person. They may play a lot of video games, then they may stream, and then they go and edit their streams to go on different, YouTube and stuff like that, or they're creating YouTube channels. So what's the problem? Well, if you're a gamer, you want the highest refresh rate. All right, well, the highest refresh rate, full HD, and you can get 200, 240, 300, whatever it is these days. But if you're a content creator, you don't want full HD. Zach cringes at full HD. You want 4K. Yeah, okay, but what's the problem with 4K? 60 hertz, maybe 120 if you got a really good thing. So you got to make that choice when you're buying a darn thing. Do you want slower refresh, higher resolution, lower resolution, higher refresh? They solved it. They created a display with mini LEDs, and it does both. How this works is simple. Well, it does require a restart, but of the laptop itself, but you can run it at full HD at 240 hertz for gaming, restart it, and it'll go to 4K. And I forgot if it's 120 hertz or, yeah, I think it's 4K 120 or something like that. Actually, I forgot the stats. But yeah, you get best of both worlds on this single display. It's so cool. You can just buy one laptop now, and you get everything you ever wanted in it. It's just amazing for gamers and content creators. The other cool thing from Razer was the Leviathan V2 Pro. So they came out with the Leviathan V2. Now they got the Pro. This is, I'm totally reviewing this. So me and Ben Wilson will be reviewing this. This is a computer speaker, a sound bar for computers. So this goes below your display, sits right in the center. And I know what you're thinking, oh, Dan, who cares? It's just, okay, it's a speaker bar. This baby is wild. First of all, they co-developed it with THX, which Razer owns, but they operate as a separate company. It does, it has beam forming technology. It has a little sensor in the front, basically like a little IR type camera that will see your face in front of it, and then it shapes the sound to your position. And whoever's closest to it is the one that gets the sound shaped to it. You can set it so other people in the room, you can make like a general turn that off kind of thing. But that's the idea. You're sitting in front of this thing, it sees you, and it shapes the sound. So the sound can do stereo, but then it can also do like virtual 7.1. And it is crazy sounding. I'm not even joking. Like when you sit in front of this thing, put on virtual 7.1 to have that beamforming technology, you will literally hear sound coming from the back on your left and right, and highs up too. It's just like it sounded so amazing. And it was just really wild technology, and it does have RGB on it, which is pretty cool too. It's big. It's not cheap. I believe it's $499. We'll have the review. You'll see it when it comes out. But it's so I'm running the Razer Noma Pros, their older speaker system. I have these two satellite speakers with tweeters, and then I have a big subwoofer. This thing also has a subwoofer that goes on your floor too, by the way. My subwoofer looks like a trash can. It's massive. And like It's phenomenal. These are THX. They're the top of the line that Razer makes. But I'm going to be able to replace all that with this sound bar and get better sound because these don't do that quite that wraparound. But yeah, there's a reason why this thing won a ton of awards from us as well as many other publications. Trust us. There's a reason why we were all blown away by it. It's rare to get a sound bar get you excited. This is a cool sound bar. LG, they're back. Besides the display, they also have the LG Grams. They have the LG Gram, was it the 17, one of my favorite laptops. That's back. I'm reviewing that. Don't worry. That actually is really impressive, Zach. You'll like that one. So they improved the display. Now it's anti-glare. It's anti-reflective, which is nice. They did put in a P series Intel 13th gen, of course, but now they've added a 3050 GPU option. That was always a weird thing with the 17, the LG Gram 17. It was basically a really big Ultrabook. And so you had this awesome, huge display. It was a nice processor, but it didn't really have any graphics power behind it, which was kind of strange, especially for photographers, which this was probably aimed at. Well, now you can get an option. You can throw a 3050 in there. That's not the most powerful GPU, but I tell you, if you're doing Photoshop and photo editing, that's going to be awesome. And it still is super stupid light. It's still stupid thin. It's just a cool laptop. But what really won the award from us is the new LG Gram Style, available in 14 and 16 inches. And I'm doing an article on this because this is really cool. First of all, it's iridescent. The outer covers on it is an iridescent material, kind of like what we had in the 80s. So when you put it into the light, like it changes color. It's really awesome. But when you open it up, the keyboard deck, the entire bottom half where the trackpad is also this iridescent glass material. And it just looks so cool because it changes color. The laptop itself is white, but then you have what looks like in some lighting, a blue, a red, a orange, yellow sort of material on the bottom. But what's really neat is it's a haptic touchpad. And you know how I feel about haptic touchpads. But it's like the XPS 13 Plus where there's no you can't see the touchpad, which I know angered a lot of people or confused people. LG solved this. When you touch the touchpad, little LED lights come on briefly to show you the borders of the touchpad. And it's just like so clever and brilliant. I'm like, there, you just fixed Dell's problem. And it just looks so rad, so futuristic. And it's a cool laptop. It has a really nice display on it. It's super light. Awesome. Definitely reviewing that one. Don't worry, just two more left. All right. Lenovo, they announced the Motorola Think phone. Now, I know what you're thinking. So this is literally the ThinkPad phone. And I think for some of us, we've been actually waiting for this. So it's a carbon fiber phone. It's made by Motorola. It's a single screen device. It literally has the red button on the side, like the touch point, which you can map and it can do different things. And they partnered up with Microsoft. So there's going to be you'll be able to hold it down and use the walkie-talkie feature for Microsoft Teams with it, which is so wild. But what makes this thing really cool, it has all this really nice security software in it. It's a beautiful display. It's got 144 hertz refresh display, Zach, which I hadn't seen before, but looks phenomenal for the transitions. Has really nice cameras on the rear, including a 50 megapixel camera, which when I was taking photos of, I was like blown away by. I was like, wow, these are good photos. Really nice front-facing camera, but it's the software integrations they did with a ThinkPad that is really brilliant. So you can use this thing as its own webcam. It just syncs wirelessly to your laptop. So if, like, say you're in Google Meet or you're in Skype and you go to select your camera, this will appear in that list. And you can choose the back or rear or the front facing camera. So why you would want to use that, one, maybe your laptop's camera sucks, right? So you can use the better ones on this thing. But the other thing is you can actually like switch this camera briefly, use the world facing camera, walk around the room or zoom in on something and show someone, or you can just switch to the front facing camera, walk around holding that if you want to, like, give a tour or show someone something. Say you're doing real estate, right? You can use it for that. And it worked seamlessly. It was really brilliant. You can also, when you take a photo, you can have it automatically show up on your ThinkPad. So you can immediately just copy, and it'll just copy paste into whatever document you're working. And then they have like all this other like some kind of security stuff. You can map the buttons to your favorite apps. And it's just, there's just a lot of clever stuff. So they didn't just like make this look like the ThinkPad phone, the Think phone. No, they built in all this really clever security that business people are going to really, really like. I mean, it has a 5,000 milliamp battery, and it does fast charging. It ships with a 68 watt hour fast charger. And with that one charger, you can fast charge your phone, but then you can just stick it into your laptop and it'll work there too. So they're like, you just need one charger now when you're traveling. I get it for consumers. You're not going to be that interested in this. I'm interested in it because I like the ThinkPad stuff and the security stuff in here for work, the ability to transfer photos, use the webcam. Like I'm going to use a lot of this stuff. So it's a really nice phone. Like it's an OLED display. Um, like I said, carbon fiber. It's military standard spec. So this thing is like it has all the same, drop test, waterproofness, and all that you expect from ThinkPad. So look for that soon. I'm totally gonna get my hands on that because I think it just looks great. And then finally, the Lenovo ThinkBook Twist. This is actually for those old enough to remember the Lenovo Helix that came out like 10 years ago. This is that. This is basically the updated version of it finally. So this is a display that rotates on a single axis point in the middle of the deck. So literally just twirls around. All right, so that's kind of cool. So you twirl around, folds down, and now you have a tablet instead of the 360 hinge way, right? Which is kind of cool because you don't need to then expose your keyboard to, like, say, a dirty table or something like that. But this has another trick up its sleeve that the other one, the Helix, never did. This has two displays. On the inside is it's like an OLED display, high resolution, just absolutely beautiful working. You have the front-facing 5 megapixel camera, all that jazz you would expect in a modern ThinkBook. But on the outside display is a color e-ink display with a faster refresh rate, which I've never seen before. So you can use either display, and you can use either display in Windows. You can actually run Windows on the color e-ink display. And the idea here is, well, it supports touch inking and pen, of course, so you can do that. But you can use the outside e-ink display to read documents, check email, take notes, and use it as a notepad like that. Or you can flip it around, use it as your operating system UI. Why would you want to do that? Say you're just writing. You're just in a word processor and you're just writing for the next hour or two. You can use a color e-ink display for that. You're going to dramatically save on battery life, right? Because e-ink barely uses anything. I think it's super clever. Is it a gimmick? Will it catch on? I don't know. But it was cool. It seemed like it worked well. I thought it was really interesting. I'll also say that Lenovo also has their Smart Paper device coming out, which is sort of like the Kindle Scribe, which I used at CES. I'm doing an article on that because I think these devices are fantastic. I love the ability to ink on e-ink devices. So Lenovo has theirs. It's built off of Android. So it's open source, everything. You can run apps on it. You can install APKs if you wanted to. Whereas Amazon's is Kindle based, right? It's a Kindle book reader that also takes notes. Two different worlds, both have their strengths and weaknesses. They did a really clever design with this. I'm also very excited about that device, but those are our best of awards. Oh, there's also, I forgot, the Asus Spatial Vision, real quickly. They made a 3D display, and we've heard this before. You don't need glasses. You just look at it. It has cameras, and it uses this trick with the display. So when you're looking at it, you get real life 3D stuff. This stuff is trippy. It is really, really good 3D. And they had like a video game I was playing, and you could just like in this world, and it was a total 3D experience without wearing glasses. A niche product, but for creators and video game people, that technology is getting really nice now. It's really impressive. It's one of those you have to see it to believe it, but it won an award for us just because it was just so impressive. Whew. All right, that was a lot there, Zach. Did any of that stuff intrigue you?
No.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm kidding. No, I will say. So the two things that stood out to me at CES that I'm personally very interested. You know, Dan, I'm a huge resolution buff when it comes to displays. Samsung announced a 5K monitor called the ViewSonic S9. I think it is. Can't remember what it's actually called. Viewfinity S9. Which is a 27-inch 5K display, basically to rival the Apple Studio display.
What's the size? 25-inch?
27. Which is
tiny.
The same. Yeah, well, that's the studio display. But Dell also announced a 32-inch 6K monitor. Now that is really interesting. Now, sadly, it looks really ugly because it's technically a conferencing monitor, so they have a massive header along the top for a camera. So that's sad. But the Samsung one, it looks really slick. Basically, it's an Apple Studio copycat which is fine by me, but for PCs, hopefully. So I'm very, very interested
Samsung
in that.
copying Apple? That's
Yeah,
a first. Have you seen the
I've
leaks for the S23?
yeah, I know, yeah, I have, yeah,
Exact same colors as Apple.
yeah,
From
I
the
know.
side profile, they're almost like the same. It's hilarious. It's
It
like
works
you
for
just
me.
sometimes I know. It's so funny though, because like Samsung has its reputation of copying Apple. And you're like, come on, it's not that bad. And then you see these, and you're like, oh damn, dude, come
Yeah,
on,
I know.
really? It's a little on the
Yeah,
nose, guys. But
but
I will say that Samsung 27-inch f 5K will look stunning because at
yeah,
27 is too small for me. I'm using I think a 34-inch Dell with the mini LED,
yeah,
and like it's all relative. That was the other big thing with TVs now, like 75, 77, and 90-inch TVs are becoming, thing. And they all sound too big, and like I remember I got my 65, I said this before, I did a 65. Oh my God, this is too big. What did I do? I'm going to regret this. And then a week later, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Now I see 75 and I'm like, oh, I want a 75. And it'll be the same thing. I'll get a 75 and then I'm going to be like, oh God, it's way too big. I have to move my head to see this thing. And I guarantee 2 weeks later, I'm like, this is awesome. I'm glad I got it. So it's all relative, but once you start using larger displays on your desktop, it's really hard to go. I put a 27 on my desk now. I'm like, what the hell is this? It's a postage stamp. Like, how am I going to get any work done on this?
yeah.
Any.
But yeah, no, those are the things that stood out to me, and I'm just hopefully this now that Apple's doing those high res monitors, that the monitor space heats up in that area. Because I know gaming monitors are a huge sort of segment of the monitor space. Productivity monitors are slightly less, but there's no 5K, 6K monitors in the PC
Yeah.
space currently. So I'm hoping more show up this year.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure, again, prices will come down and all that. Mini LED now is really catching on. That's like that technology's been evolving for a while, but that's going mainstream. You'll start to see it in more devices going forward. Like I said, Razer's using it in their Blade 16. So, yeah, a lot of cool stuff happening in the display world. But yeah, those are the big highlights from CES. I tell you, it was actually a really good CES. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff, despite the fact, and real briefly, that the PC market isn't doing quite well. That's not unexpected, though. Let's be honest here. It's post-pandemic. So people are done buying laptops. It's a market. It's saturated. It's still a higher market than what it was pre-pandemic, and that's going to remain because a lot of people, things that bought these laptops and PCs were enterprise, and they're going to need to update the computers in 2 to 3 to 4 years, right? So we should see, the cycle of that. And now you also have, the market, we don't know with a possible recession and people are saving money. It's post New Year's, people aren't spending cash right now. So there's been a quote historic decline in PC shipments, which I don't find that unexpected. Like I said, the market's going to come back down to normal. We couldn't sustain this. People aren't going to buy new laptops every year, especially in an economic environment that's not favorable to them. But we should start to see this stabilize. I will say, though, historically, again, the one thing that's always stabilized here was gaming laptops, gaming displays, gaming rigs, custom gaming GPUs, although GPUs are declined too. But all that stuff tends to be resilience against economic declines because gamers they don't care. They're like, oh, market's not bad, too bad. I need to game. I need the fastest CPU out there. So even when iPad was like, oh, PCs are dead. Everybody's going to get a tablet. And we saw a big decline in PCs then, too. And everybody's like, the PC's dead. Nope, gaming kept going. Just kept that market just kept growing. And now that's why gaming is so absurd these days. Like with all the RGB and you can buy super expensive stuff because people will always buy gaming. So we'll see what happens with the market, but there's still a lot of cool stuff coming out. All right, I think we wrap it up. Do you have a thing of the week?
Real quick, I guess, yeah. I watched a movie. It came out on Netflix called Glass Onion, and I thought it was amazing.
Oh, sure. Well, that's the sequel to
Yes, Knives Out,
Knives
which
Out or
I
whatever.
didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't actually get around to watching until just before the second one came out, and I missed
It's a
out.
fun
The
movie.
Knives Onion I thought it was great. I really do like the
Oh, yeah.
main character.
Literally everyone thought it was great, Zach.
No, I'm just saying it was amazing.
Yeah.
And the second one is also amazing. So watch it.
I did see the Triangle of Sadness, or just called
That
Triangle of
sounds fun.
Sadness. It's a satire. It's hilarious.
Oh, really?
It all
Okay.
does. It rips on rich people. It's about all these rich people that go onto a yacht, and then the yacht, like, an accident happens, and they get washed up on an island, and it's just like it's so funny, but it's funny satire. Like It's a little on the nose in some scenes, but it's just like it's long. It's like 2.5 hours. But Woody Harrelson's in it, and he's just hilarious. But it has a really cool cast, and you don't know where the story's going, even with the messaging. But that was a fun, unexpected movie, so I highly recommend that if you're watching. It's a little more highbrow, but also I was dying at some of the references and some of the scenes in it. So I thought that was great. I'll also say, going back to this Kindle Scribe, this thing was game changing for me, and I'll do an article about that. And that's why I'm excited about the Lenovo Smart Paper as well. As a semi reporter, I was never trained as a journalist reporter, but I guess I am. In some cases, when I was at these events and I was talking to people, I was using this thing to take notes with, and I absolutely loved it. It was just, e-ink is now there where the latency is just so good. It felt extremely natural, and the way they make the screen, and Lenovo spent, like they told me, like a ton of research to make their display and pen actually feel like paper. And theirs is definitely more scratchy feeling, so it really feels like you're on a different type of material, like this supposed to be a pen and paper, or sorry, theirs actually really felt like a pencil and paper. It's a little bit more extreme than what Amazon's does, but Amazon's is good too. But it's so realistic, and you get this amazing battery life. It was instant on. It's super thin and light, and it's a great e-reader. I am a Kindle guy, so I have a ton of Kindle books that I was using on the airplane. It's backlit and all that stuff, but it's one of the more simpler devices, but I'm totally blown away by it. Like it's just really kind of changed my workflow and how I'm using stuff. I just want to use it all the time. And I know it's not like on paper, it doesn't sound like the most exciting device, but if you're a student, if you're in business and meetings all the time, or you're a journalist, I think this is absolutely just one of the most important devices to come onto the market in the last few years. And I'm excited about Lenovo's to try that one out, which again, I said is more open source and runs Android and all that kind of stuff. But it's really impressive technology. I bring it back to Microsoft. I kind of wish Microsoft would have made this. They still could, tie it into, OneDrive and OneNote, like just have it as like a digital OneNote, right? Like just build a whole thing around that and that concept, keep it thin and light with the Surface, panache for software design and hardware design, and make a device like that. Yeah, it's not a PC. But what's nice about it, and I said this before in this podcast, that sometimes you get a device that has a single function or maybe just one or two functions, and it just does it really well, and that's what makes it great. It's like that Lenovo, those glasses coming out with the virtual display, and it just shows one virtual display. It's plug and play into a device. Yeah, it's not virtual reality on that stuff, but it does what it's supposed to do so well. Only some people want that device, but those who do are going to really appreciate it. And I feel like, Microsoft could have done something here in this space as well, and just built it around their Office. It could bring in Microsoft Your Word documents, have an on-screen keyboard for quickly typing. Shoot, I mean, you can even build Outlook right into it, get your emails, and just imagine you're just going around to your meetings, and you just carry this device with you. You get your calendar. Like, what else would you technically need, right? So Microsoft, if you're listening, don't worry, I'll do an editorial to say this, but you should make something like that. So there we go. All right, we'll do Q&A with the podcast audience right now. But if you're listening to this live, you get to join in. So congratulations. But if you're listening to this recorded, you cannot. But you can go see the replay of the video on our YouTube channel at Windows Central. And as always, we do record this live Fridays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. I'm also on Mastodon. You can get the link there in my Twitter bio because that's not illegal anymore. And you can follow Zach Bowden at ZACBOWDEN. I will say a lot of people are on Mastodon. I get a lot of interaction on Mastodon. So if that is your thing, don't worry. I do respond to those toots as well. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Wonderful.
Well, that was a long podcast, but we were under 2 hours, so
yeah. Well, we kind of knew it would be.
Yeah.
So if there are any questions that you want us to attempt to answer, we will do our best. If there are no questions, we will go. What What phones are Dan and Zach currently using as their daily drivers? We kind of answered it on the podcast. Dan's using a Pixel 7. I'm still using the Duo 2, but I am sort of moving myself into the Nothing phone currently. I really do like this thing.
What's not legal anymore? I was saying on Twitter, there was in the insanity that was Twitter, Elon Musk briefly for about a day or two made it a term of service violation to post or share links to other social networks, including Mastodon. So if you had put it in your bio or you tweeted it out, your account could be suspended.
Zach, we need more stories on Next Valley and Next Droid Valley. Yeah, I'm working on it. When I know more, then I'll be sure to get a story going.
Oh, this is a good question. I should have talked about, but I'll mention it next week. Two questions for Dan. How's your ThinkPad X13S holding up? And why do you think they've been discontinued on Lenovo's website in many countries? Oh, I didn't know that. I imagine they were discontinued maybe because they're not selling that great. To be honest, I should have got my review out a long time ago. How's it holding up? I actually used it on CES. That's what I use as my main laptop. I did have the Lenovo laptop studio with me to edit photos on while I was in the hotel room. It's something a little bit bigger. But yeah, the X13S was my main device on the airplane. I tweeted it out that I was using it, and it was fantastic. It did everything I wanted it to. It was instant on. It got good battery life. I got 5G, while I was in the back of an Uber going to the next event that had to be there. Yeah, so I absolutely still love that. Then someone's following up, well, how does it compare to the Surface Pro 9 on ARM? I'll be honest, I prefer the ThinkPad X13S, partly because it's only got like a full HD display. And so with full HD and then ARM processor, actually things feel a little bit more zippy and fast. I will say the Surface Pro 9 has a very good front-facing camera and it looks fantastic. It's fun to use. I really I'm not hugely disappointed with the Pro 9 ARM. But, for practically speaking, what my job was, the ThinkPad X13S just worked really well. I didn't really need pen and inking. Again, pen and inking would have been good, but now I had the Amazon Kindle Scribe with me. So I just carried those two devices around, and it was like super light. It was compact. Both had amazing battery life. I didn't need to carry a charger. That was my kind of killer duo. So, yeah, I still recommend it. How likely will we see Surface Go 4 this year? Zach, you know about that, right?
Sorry, say again?
How likely will we see Surface Go 4 this year?
I think it's pretty likely, yeah. Either in the spring. If it's not the spring, it'll be the fall. But yeah, no, Surface Go 4 with an ARM processor, I think, is quite likely.
What are my earbuds of the month? I'm still using those Lenovo ones that I've been using for the last, 6-7 months, but for most times because they're in my car because I go to the gym and everything like that. I've been using those Bose Quiet Sound 2s. I don't know what they call them. The brand new earbuds that they came out with that are pretty expensive, but those are absolutely amazing. I use them at the gym. I use them on the airplanes and all that kind of stuff. So those are still my favorite. I would be using them now, but they're downstairs and these are here, so it's just easier for me to grab them. What sweater is Daniel wearing? I have no idea. I'll be honest. I've had this for many, many years. I'm in the Northeast, so it's always very cold here.
If it hasn't been discussed, thoughts on Microsoft possibly expanding their OpenAI partnership with a $10 billion investment and giving them a 49% ownership stake? Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Yeah, I believe it. AI is an up-and-coming thing. I do believe that will tie into a lot of upcoming products. Maybe not this year. We're already seeing things like Windows Studio Effects, and that will expand in Windows to so many more things over the coming couple of years. So yeah, no, I'm not surprised that Open AI, because they're also integrating OpenAI into Office as well. AI is going to be everywhere. I'm still not overly impressed with it. I've seen that Chat GPT thing, and I look at some of the things it generates, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't ready to replace humans, because it can string a very well put together sentence along. Yeah, it can, but oftentimes it's not always right in what it's saying. If you ask it for instructions on a thing or something, it will likely get those instructions wrong at some point, whether it be at the very start or a bit further down. But it's not accurate. It can certainly put sentences together, and it can come across as totally well put and whatnot. But the contents of what it's saying is not always fully there. They still need a human to, at the very least, fact check it.
Someone says thanks. The X13S is with 512 gigs and 16 gigs of RAM is going for $600 on eBay. That's a steal. I mean, it's kind of sad. I feel bad because I kind of didn't help here by not reviewing it, but it's because I've changed job and my life's been stretched really thin. I'm still going to try to do something on it because it is one of my favorite devices to use, and I became more of a fan of using it on this trip. But yeah, it's if you can get it for $600, I totally would. I mean, it's such a small, like, it was funny because one of the pictures I tweeted, did I tweet it? No, I didn't. I don't think I did. I should. It was when I was on the airplane and I was flying Comfort Plus, so slightly more legroom, but the laptop fit perfectly on the tray table because it's so small. But if I had anything bigger, it would have been it would have been tough to use on the airplane. But and that's what it's literally built for, right? It's literally built for that situation. And it worked as expected. So if you travel on planes a lot, or you're in small spaces, or you just need something, I thought it was great. It's one of my favorite devices. I should really do coverage, but dude, I have like 6 reviews I need to do in no time. But yeah. Love those Lenovo Buds. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, love those Lenovo Buds. They are great. Yeah, I highly recommend them. They're very good.
Does Zach have any information on updates Microsoft have planned for the Duo, and any rough timeframes? Sadly, no timeframes. But things like we've talked about it before, but docking to Windows 365 is coming this year, I believe. Inking on the lock screen, I think, is also planned. I can't remember off the top of my head now. There's certainly a few features I've heard that are in the works for this year.
We didn't mention Apple's toaster fridge, aka touchscreen MacBooks in 2025. I honestly didn't follow that rumor, but to be fair, we've been hearing about that for many, many years. So I guess I'll believe it when I see it. 2025 is a pretty long time off, but there's always been talk for many years now that eventually Apple would try to merge its Mac OS and iPad OS into something. I think that's obvious. That's where they want to go. So it's not surprising.
When should Duo users expect Android 13? That's a good question. The last time I had this conversation with somebody, I think it was up in the air whether or not it would even get Android 13, because Android 12L and Android 13 are already very similar. There's only a few additional things in Android 13, very minor things, might I add, really, that benefit on Android 13. Especially, most of that doesn't even apply to the Duo, I don't think, in regards to form factor support. So I think the conversation they were having is, why should we, fuss about delivering Android 13, or should we just wait for Android 14? And so that's the conversation I know they were having. I don't know if they decided upon doing that, or if they are going to deliver Android 13. But I wouldn't care if they didn't. I know, but technically on paper, I guess it looks bad that they're going to wait until September, October to deliver Android 14. But again, there's really nothing in Android 13 that stands out to me as being vital for the Duo, unlike Android 12L, which was a big, huge update for the Duo that really did sort of improve it, I think. Thoughts on if the next Duo will have inking? I'm pretty sure it will have inking.
Oh yeah, that'd be imperative.
Do you think Microsoft will make their Windows version of Android work better with Windows? We should stop calling it Windows version of Android. It's still Android, just with a Windows UI, possibly. Samsung's version of Android is nothing like any other version of Android, but nobody calls it... I guess they do say Samsung's version of Android. Okay, fine. But it's Android. I don't want people to get confused here. What Microsoft is doing is on Android. The UI just might be more Windowsy. Anyway... yes, the idea is Microsoft will be able to do the ecosystem, the interoperability between phone and PC better than what Google's doing. Because if you think about it, Android being open source and being much more customizable in that way really benefits Microsoft in being able to get its claws in and integrate things. That's why Samsung's version of Android is so different. It's because OEMs essentially almost have free reign to do what they like to Android, to bend it and customize it and design it in their own way so that it almost becomes its own operating system, even though it's all based on the same OS. Windows, you can't really do that. Windows is very much Windows, and you can OEMs can build software on top of Windows to try and get it to do things. Samsung's already sort of half doing this with its phones and PCs. Samsung PCs have their own suite of Samsung apps, which are designed to bring that interoperability between a Galaxy and a PC. Google is rumored to be trying to do it as well through Google Play Games on Windows, and I think they're also working on an app or a client that's supposed to sync with your phone. But again, it's all going to be apps sitting on top of Windows, and that's currently what Windows Phone Link is. But Microsoft can, and as based on what I've been hearing, likely will, hopefully at least, take it further and integrate into Windows, make it so it's seamless, just like Mac and iPhone. And on Microsoft's version of Android, they can do that seamlessly because it's Android and they're able to customize it in that way. And Windows is theirs, so they can also get right in there, integrate things. For example, imagine being able to see your battery status or your phone's notification shade directly on Windows. Stuff like that. That would be stuff they can do because they are Microsoft and they own Windows. So ideally, if Microsoft is able to execute on this well, Microsoft would have the best integration between phone and PC. Whether or not they actually get there is another question entirely. Could Microsoft be planning an actual hardware ecosystem to keep their phone offerings sticky, i.e. update buds, watch/wrist or finger wearable? Not too sure about the watch or other wearables, but I have heard Surface Earbuds 2 are supposed to be coming at some point. They were supposed to ship late last year and didn't, so they must be imminent at this point if they've not been cancelled, and I think it would be strange. My guess is maybe what happened is because there is no imminent phone, they decided to hold on to them. And then they'll launch alongside a new phone when it's ready.
Makes sense.
Right, any more questions? If not, we will say goodbye. Did you let Android Central know that I'm going to be editing the podcast? Yeah. Did you let them know?
No.
Okay, no. Let them do it this week.
Yeah, that's
I'll
fine.
I'll do it next week.
Yeah, it's already invoiced for that.
Okay, brilliant. Sure. Right, last call for questions. Because I want to go and eat. I've not eaten dinner yet.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the Duo 3 stereo screen will be full screen or half, aka Samsung Flip. It will be full. It's a cover screen.
Yeah. What carrier SIM did I use on the X13S? I used, it's basically T-Mobile. It was Mint SIM, though. I have a data-only one.
Do you think that that next value will have a classic taskbar? I know it's still early to tell, but don't you think that having that GNOME/macOS-like layout would only be Windows 8 all over again? I don't know if they're going to have switches between backwards and forth. For all we know, that UI that you've seen might just be for touchscreens. And when you dock a keyboard to it, it does settle down and look a bit more like Windows 11. But I will say that that whole dock thing isn't that different than what we've already got. And I know there's that law that people refer to where you should be able to throw things into corners to be able to click on them and whatnot. That could technically still apply to a floating thing. Visually, it will be floating, but if you really wanted to, they could still make it so that hovering over it underneath the dock would still click on the icon in question. But yeah, I don't know. Panos seems to be really... I say Panos as if it's his choice, which, to be fair, it might be. The current leadership appears to be quite heavy-handed on the changes being permanent. There was no Windows 10 Start menu option on Windows 11. There was no way to... Oh, I guess they did give you the option to put the taskbar back to the left if you really wanted to. But that was, I think, one thing, that the only thing they really gave you the option to do. So yeah, I don't really know. But I don't think the bigger change will be the whole system tray thing, because I think the plan is to move the system tray up to run along the top of the UI, which is why you can't move the taskbar. It's not that they couldn't add it; they could totally add the taskbar moving thing back if they wanted to. It's that it doesn't fit in with what their vision is for the future, and that is there will be UI elements elsewhere that will make it so you cannot move the taskbar there, and so that's probably going to be a bigger shift. But it's not like it won't be an unfamiliar UI, because phones have the status bar at the top of the screen. Mac OS has the status bar at the top of the screen. Tablets have the status bar at the top of the screen. The only thing that doesn't right now is Windows, and so in this case, all Windows will be doing is joining the fray. It won't be an unfamiliar UI to anybody.
I want that so bad.
Yeah. You've got your eye thing on again, haven't you?
I do.
It's so obviously... I don't know why it's so obvious. It just is. That's the problem with it. If it was more subtle, I think it would be better. But it's so obvious.
Yeah, there's no slider for it either, so I'll turn it off. It makes me look more wide awake, though.
No, it does. You're right. You look very attentive.
Yeah, Samsung PR let me know. They're like, "Hey, I saw you on the plane getting off in Boston. I was going to say something, but you look really tired." I'm like,
Thanks.
I was kind of tired, but I wasn't that tired. But I was just like, that's just the way I look. I'm like, sorry. I have resting jerk face, resting tired face. Yeah, I don't really look. I conserve my energy for what I don't know, but I do.
Right.
So,
anywho, are you ready to go?
All right. Yeah, if you can answer one more, it's fine.
I was going to say, any new laptop studio this spring? I don't know about the spring, but yes, there's a laptop studio 2 that's supposed to be in the cars this year. I did hear it would be 12th gen, which seems old when you consider 13th gen is basically happening now or about to happen. So we'll see about that. They could update it to 13th gen. I don't know. So better software and completely different hardware for Duo 3 possible. Seems like Duo 2 will follow Neo Fate. Well, they won't be making another dual screen phone, but the Duo 2 isn't just going to be cut off. They've committed to 3 years. The Duo 2 will be supported until 2024. That includes new features, new versions of Android. It will keep up with the Duo 3 assuming the Duo 3 launches before the end of 2024. Obviously, they might wait until the Duo 2 is actually out of support and then obviously do the next one. I don't know. But the Microsoft will see the Duo 2 through to the end of its life, which will be at the end of 2024. They won't cut it off early. They won't stop giving you updates. That's not going to happen. All right, that's it then.
All right.
Bye everyone. We're back next Friday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated when we go live. Until then, see you next time. Bye.